He's back again with another video on his thought on a video game, and this time it's Resident Evil 5! With the Resident Evil film coming out soon, Resident Evil Afterlife, which will be in 3D, yay, I thought now's probably the best time to talk about Resident Evil 5 and how it received mixed reception for the most part. Now I think I can figure out why this is, and it's not because the game's bad, and it's not because the game's brilliant. It's because the game is Resident Evil 4 pretty much, and for that reason alone, everyone, well, quite a lot of people seem very disappointed. Now to understand the disappointment that people felt, it would probably stem from Resident Evil 4 being the turning point in the Resident Evil franchise, and people expected quite a lot from Resident Evil 5. However, nothing really changed. Sure, co-op was added, and that was easily the best feature of Resident Evil 5, and it was a definite selling point to me. But Resident Evil 5 failed in quite a few aspects, one of which being the story. It ended a pretty major story arc in such a slapdash and cheap way, and I also had a few issues with the return of Chris Redfield. Now I'm going to sound a bit like a Resident Evil nerd here, but Chris Redfield, he wasn't exactly Mr. Macho Man in the original Resident Evil, but in Resident Evil 5 it's clear the boy's been doing a lot of bench presses because his arms are huge. But that's enough on Chris Redfield and these big beefy arms. Let's talk about what Resident Evil is and what it isn't. What it is a fantastic co-op experience on the Xbox 360, filled with fantastic action sequences and some pretty crazy gore. What it isn't is the huge debut that we were expecting from Resident Evil title. It can be a little bit disappointing in terms of story, and some of the levels are a little bit repetitive and boring, and in places it just takes too much from Resident Evil 4. And this really was the main downer for me and a lot of Resident Evil fans, because the chances are you've probably played the death out of Resi 4. So when Resident Evil 5 came out, you were all ready for this new experience, but we didn't get that. What we did get was some wonderful visuals, I must say. They were fantastic. Visuals aside, what else is at Resident Evil 5's heart? And the simple answer would be co-op. The co-op is Resident Evil 5's saving grace. It's intense, it's rewarding, and very satisfying to play, not in the dirty way either. And if it wasn't for the co-op, I honestly believe Resident Evil 5 would have easily been forgotten among the titles that came out in 2009. With that being said, Resident Evil 5 is still a decent game. It looks good, it plays good, and the co-op experience is still one of the best on current gen systems. Replayability is offered in the forms of mercenaries, which can now be completed with 1 or 2 players, and now comes with leaderboards. But for me, Resident Evil 5 is always going to be a bit of a disappointment, and that's purely because I played a lot of Resident Evil 4, and Resident Evil 5 takes a hell of a lot from that game. And for me, there is one game on the 360 which came out before Resident Evil 5 and is still superior, and that is Deadspace. Now Deadspace is a fantastic game, and much like Resident Evil 5, it takes a lot of the main gameplay elements from Resident Evil 4 and puts its own spin on it. In this case, instead of aiming for the head like you would in traditional first person and third person shooters, Deadspace encourages you to sever the limbs of the enemy. This is a gimmick of sorts, but it is quite effective, but it can get a little bit redundant towards the end of the game when your weapons are upgraded to be so powerful it doesn't matter where you hit them. But that's going into another subject. Deadspace combines a decent story with fantastic horror elements and a brooding atmosphere throughout the whole dark environment set in the game. Now, a lot of people don't seem to realise that Deadspace was actually made by EA. Now, I know a lot of people hate EA, but to their credit, they have been trying to push a lot of new IPs out there, and Deadspace, I think, was part of this push. It was one of the very first titles in this push, and I've got to say, if they keep making games like this, then they can bring out as many FIFA 340,000s. I will not care. They keep making top quality games like this, it's fine with me. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on Resident Evil 5 and a bit on Dead Space. So yeah, that was my reviews on 2 quite scary games with lots of gore and lots of action. That's all I really play, really, and that's all I'm ever going to give my thoughts on. So, what? Oh, Jesus. Quite cold in here, isn't it?